Hey, welcome to Bluejay Banter. We are live here at Let It Fly. Tim Kruger, Ross Ferrarini with you. How's it going, Ross?
All good. College basketball started.
I know. We got a game in the books already, and look at this background. Is this awesome? The Bluejay
Looks
Banter
very
logo.
nice. It looks a little bit better than our Zooms last year. That's for sure.
With plants and sunlight and, somebody's apartment in the background. Yeah, I know. Hey, welcome to the show. This is our quote-unquote new Bluejay Banter show. The first one we've done here at Let It Fly. We'll be doing those here all season. So you can come on down, see us, watch the show. You can also go to our YouTube channel where most people tonight will be watching. So YouTube viewers, thanks for joining us. Please, if you can, hit that subscribe button. It helps us out so much. And also hit the like button to share this with all other Jays fans. We got a great show in store for you tonight. Kirsten Bernthal Booth, head volleyball coach at Creighton, will join us in a little bit. I had a chance to talk to her earlier today. Wow, what a monster win over the weekend. They just swept Marquette right out of the arena. 9 sweeps in a row. Do you know how, think about it. You go on the road to, I don't know, Georgetown or somewhere. I think you might have an offset and lose this 9 in a row. And that dates back to when they lost to Marquette the last time.
It seems pretty good. I don't know anything about volleyball, but it seems good.
It seems pretty good, yeah. Incredible. I mean, it would be like, Booth actually has a basketball reference today because we were talking about serving. And back in the day when we first started Bluejay Banter, Danny O'Byrne was on the show. And Danny did the scoreboard for the volleyball games at Creighton. So he knew a little bit about volleyball, and I was talking to him about, because I didn't know that much at the time, and I talked to him about serving, and I'm like, God, it drives me nuts. And he goes, Tim, you got to understand, this isn't like rec league where you're just trying to serve it over the net. These guys are trying to spot it in a certain spot on the court. So once in a while, until, the recruiting, build, at that time we were still building the program, until it builds up, you're probably going to have some servers that are going to make some service errors. So we started talking a little bit about that. I said, how's your serving? And she goes, people think it's just like a free throw. She goes, it's not like a free throw. It's much, much more difficult. She brought in an assistant this year, and she had like certain spots. And she goes, oh, no, he's got it narrowed down to like a spot like this is where he wants me to serve it. So it's pretty big skill to do that. But she'll join us, and we'll see where they're going this weekend and look ahead. There's only 2 weekends left in the regular season, then they head into the Big East tournament. Then later on, we got to treat Clayton Collier of WOTV in Omaha, Channel 6. The new sports director is going to join us. He's been all over the place covering the Jays. He was in New York. He had a big presence the other night at the game. So he's going to drop by, and we're going to talk some hoops. And it's good to have another guy in the TV business here in Omaha, really following hoops and following the Blue Jays. And we'll kind of, since he's new to the area, we'll kind of like ask him, where did he come from? What's his experience with basketball? And get his thoughts on the Jays as we open it all up tomorrow night. Florida A&M, 8 o'clock tip. So you got plenty of time to get downtown, have something to eat, have a nice cold beverage.
This would be a good place to do it.
This is a great place to do it. Friday night was absolutely rocking.
It was.
Were you able to get out of here after our post-game show?
I had to talk. I stopped and talked to a few folks that were out and about after the Jays game. But the TV setup here is big time. I mean, it's when you think about a sports bar, and a lot of times you go into a sports bar, and they've got nonsense on.
Yep.
Like whoever is in control of the remote has zero clue what's going on. And I'm not going to fault them for that, but you got like professional bull riding on like the CBS Sports Network or something, and that's on like 3 separate TVs, and they're missing games, and they're annoyed that you're asking if you could switch to this game. That's not an issue here. There's games on, relevant games on every single television. So
right, and we've seen the setup, not only up here in the podcast studio for the games, but they have iPads down below where they can put different games on different TVs. It's pretty sophisticated. So, and they have a schedule that automatically rolls, and it changes the channels to what the games come on. And so, if you ever, there's only 80 TVs in here. So if you want to game it sometime, just ask.
You're probably going to be able to to get a game on.
Especially tonight when there's so many college hoops games on. Although I think the Big East is doing the whip around thing again, aren't they tonight? I believe they are.
Oh, on the Fox Sports, on FS1.
Too.
Yeah.
And then I know there's some games on the ACC network. There might be a couple other ones around as well. There isn't a lot of big-time D1. I think I saw Goodman tweet out that of the 100 or so games, there's 72 of them are power against non-D1 opponents. So
yeah, there's not great games.
There's a lot of
USC K-State
is later on
tonight.
Yep.
But
and that's in Vegas as well, right? I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's some okay games as far as if you're really kind of a college hoops head and you follow a lot of mid majors and low majors. There's some okay ones. To the casual fan, there's probably not a ton of great ones that are going to pique your interest, but I'm going to be watching.
I tell you right now, jump on and you get to watch UConn. You can kind of see what their new look Huskies look like. Villanova's playing.
Yep.
By the way, we're going to talk about our shoot the shot contest we have going on, and one of Ross's was that Villanova he took a 3-pointer that Villanova is going to win the Big East, so get a chance to preview them. I've already circled this upset special, Xavier and Robert Morris tonight. Robert Morris
I think a lot of people,
ton of points.
Yeah, a lot of people are not. It seems to me at least that the national media and or potentially odds makers are not discounting
the
injuries to Fremantle and Hunter.
Yeah.
Anybody that's watched that program and knows who they lost and who they had coming back, I mean, those are two huge losses. Butler plays at home against Eastern Michigan. Brand new kind of looking Butler roster with transfers. Yep. Posh Alexander came over from St. John's. It's a huge pickup for them. So
that'll be a different one.
I'm trying to think who else. Providence plays Columbia at home, I believe. Columbia has been awful in the Ivy.
Rutgers tonight.
Princeton-Rutgers.
Should be a very good game.
That's obviously not a Big East game, but
that's a good game, yeah.
Lots going on.
But, and then a future Jays opponent, Oklahoma State, with I think a relatively tough opener with Abilene Christian, who has won their league the last couple of years. So they're a strong team, and it'll be interesting to see how they match up with Oklahoma State. So there you go. There's some games for you to watch out for tonight. And as we said about the postgame show, so after every game, right back here at Let It Fly, we're going to do the postgame show live. It'll be live on in the bar here. You can come in. If it's not up on the sound, you can just ask for one of their headsets, and you can pop it on and click on our channel, and you can listen to us do the postgame show. Every postgame, we're going to have a coach and a player join us. Last show, we had Coach Murfeld, and Trey Alexander joined us. Tomorrow night, I think Coach Vargas is going to join, the new video coordinator.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a chance, I haven't heard anything different, but we're going to have a chance to chat with newcomer Brock Weiss, who recently just announced that they're going to redshirt him. But it'll be interesting to see, talk to a player right after they found out they're redshirting, how are they handling it, what's their plan going forward, and I'm more interested with him is because he's a pretty big kid. Like his dad was a football coach. I mean, he's built like a football player. I'm interested in talking to him about day in, day out of practice, going up against Fred and Kalk. I mean, that's got to be.
It's a great experience for him.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about probably what that did for a kid like Xander Yates, who was a walk-on here, who had a kind of a similar build to Brock. Brock's probably a little bit bigger than him, but Xander could play a little bit. And Xander ended up transferring to a low major. Their name escapes me on a scholarship. But, I got to imagine the experience that he got going against Kalk and Fred most days in practice has got to serve him well at that level.
Absolutely. But in a little bit, we're going to talk with Coach Booth. But right now, I want to point out our sponsors. We have two terrific sponsors, the West Pacific Dental Group, Dr. Robert Hogan sponsoring us again, as well as Infusion Brewery, who you're going to hear more about later. But West Pacific Dental Group, Dr. Robert Hogan and his staff just do a terrific job. They're providing, they're committed to providing you and your loved one exceptional care in a compassionate and friendly manner. They're located in Omaha. West Pacific Dental Group is known as one of the best dental care offices in the area. They believe their patients deserve the best care, and they make every effort to make you feel welcome and at ease. I'm a client of theirs. They do a fabulous job, and they do make you feel at ease. They go over the entire course of treatment that you may need and decide what is best for you. And the staff is just so friendly. You're going to love it. So give a call today, 402-697-0765, West Pacific Dental Group. You'll be glad you gave them a call. So as I said earlier, I had a chance to get a hold of Coach Booth this afternoon, and her and I had a little Zoom call, and we're going to play that for you right now. That after the big win against Marquette, we had a chance to speak to her and find out what's going on in the volleyball program.
I'm a forever pessimist. So I always, the joke with my staff is I think we're going to lose to everyone. Now I would never articulate out loud, but I felt positive going into the match. So, I don't think we did anything extraordinary beyond what we've been doing. I did think Marquette did not play well. So that helped obviously just kind of gain that momentum. They started to play a lot better in set 3. But we really were in control of the match from, very early in the first set. And I'm not naive, just know that if we play Marquette again down the road, I think they'll give us a much better match.
From a purely execution standpoint, is there one thing that jumped out at you yesterday that, was a big factor in the win? Or was it more just doing all the little things better?
Well, we're hitting at a pretty high clip, generally I mean, that's over these last, that 9 match you talk about, we're hitting at a high clip. And so offensively, we've been doing well. I don't think we're a high air team. So we're not giving teams a lot of points. I think that's where we could struggle is if we, as soon as you start giving team points, they're going to earn some. So then that gets you into big issues. So, and I do think we are good defensively, both blocking and just and that's been a huge focus over the last 3 weeks. I thought we were really deficient there for points of the season. And so we've spent a lot of time on practice of just pursuit. It doesn't have to be pretty. We want to play ugly is what we say. Get a touch on the ball, give us an opportunity. I thought the match really would come down to serving and passing. Marquette beat us in that aspect yesterday. It was close, but they passed at a little higher clip than we did, had fewer service errors, one more ace than we did. So, that's an area that we have to continue to get better. But I did think, we hit at a much higher offensive clip than they did yesterday.
You mentioned serving, and I remember this has to be way, way back. Shows how long we've been doing this, but I remember when, the program was starting to build, and I remember Daniel Byrne was doing the show with us that time. He kept saying, well, Tim, you got to understand, when they're hitting the serve out of bounds, they're trying to go to this specific spot. And I remember you talking about, well, we haven't quite got there yet. And obviously, through the years, you can see how much, the serving has just taken off. How has the serving been overall this year?
Yeah, we've really improved on that. I think that's been a huge focal point. Our new assistant, Adam Kessinger, has kind of taken the lead with serving this year and added some more specificity, I would say. Like I used to give kind of big areas. He's really narrowed it to try to get the players to really focus on very specific areas of the court that we need to be able to hit. We radar gun every serve in practice. In a lot of our home matches, we radar gun to make sure we're serving at the tempo we need to be serving at. We spend a lot of time on depth. I probably used this analogy when we talked last time. A lot of people will say it's like a free throw. It is not like a free throw at all because it is an offensive weapon. And if you give an easy serve into the court, the get it in sort of idea, at our level, it's coming down your throat. So we have to serve aggressively, which means you're going to have some errors. You just hope that you don't have too many errors that you can't score some behind the line.
Oh yeah, I would say serving is way more difficult than free. I mean, free throw is one small little thing. I mean, you have about 3 or 4 bad service, rotations in a row. You're in big trouble.
Yeah, and you want to, as a coach, if you have the subs, you got to put your 6 best servers out there to serve. I mean, our players know if your serve is not scoring, we're going to sub you out and put someone on the bench in that maybe can serve for you. So it's a really, really critical aspect of the game.
Even though you don't like to hear this, I'm going to say it again. So this run of 9 in a row, how much of it was just getting healthy, and how much of it was, the team just really gelling after that Marquette loss?
Well, I think, we've had more injuries. I don't know if it's more injuries, but we've had a lot of injuries this year. Obviously, the one that stood out was Nora Sis being out for 6 weeks. But, what that's created for a lot of different positions, because we've had DSs out, we've had middle blocker out, we've had a variety of different things, is people have gotten the opportunity to come in and show what they can do on the court and provided good depth for us. So I think as much as it's painful to have kids out, it is great for other people to see, to be able to evaluate how players can handle the lights on. Maybe you're seeing stuff in practice and how do they respond when they're on the court. But I think it did help getting obviously these players back and people stepping up. But I think they've gotten better. We've spent a lot of time in practice working on, each week we kind of dive into a couple things that we think we can get better, both maybe for this coming weekend, but then maybe for postseason. So some short-term stuff and some long-term stuff that we've spent time on. And, that's got to be, that's what I said in the locker room after the win yesterday of this is, we are not peaking right now. We need to go back to the gym this week and continue to get better.
We're talking with head volleyball coach Kirsten Bernthal Booth. Hard to believe, like you mentioned it, we're coming to the end of the season. You're on your last road trip coming up this weekend to Seton Hall and then to co-leader St. John's. Kind of preview the matches this weekend.
Yeah, Seton Hall has a second-year coach, and I mean, just you can see the chemistry difference. They're a little up and down, but they're the type of team, especially on their home court, if we're not ready to go, could bite us. So we need to make sure that we are not looking ahead to the St. John's match. And then on Saturday, we'll play St. John's, who you said, everyone talks about Marquette and Creighton. Well, St. John's is in a dead heat. We're all tied in that first place slot. And there's big implications on this, not only the Big East Championship, but the first and second seeds get buys at the Big East tournament. So there's bigger things than just trying to hang a banner on this match. St. John's is a tough place to play. They're a foreign lane team. They did not play well when they came to Creighton a month or so ago. So I know that they will want to be playing better. They don't have challenge. This is the last year that's even legal in the Big East, and it's incredibly frustrating. So we need to be prepared to, I mean, I don't know if you were at the match yesterday against Marquette, but there was 6, 7, 8 challenges between Marquette and Creighton, and almost all of them were overturned. Well, each one of those challenges is usually a 2-point swing, because that's big. I mean, that can determine a winner of a match. So we've got to go in, play clean volleyball, expect to maybe lose some points that we think we won, and be able to mentally, kind of be resilient to battle that.
Yeah. Just a side note, because I always look at these quirky, silly things. So normally, like when you do a Friday, Sunday, you guys play at 1. You're playing at 5 Eastern time. Does that cause any travel? I mean, I know where St. John's is. You're not far from either airport, but does that cause any additional would you rather be playing at noon or 1? So
Oh yeah, no, because we play back-to-back days. So we'd like the minimum in the league is 22 hours rest. So okay. I mean, we'd actually love to go later. So I think we're getting 23 hours between these 2 matches. So no, now if we were playing on Sunday, yes, absolutely. Because then you could fly out. The reasons it's different at Creighton is because the teams are generally coming from another place and no one's within driving range. Everyone else in the Big East has a school that's within, an hour or 2. So you can play on Friday night, drive an hour and a half and get to your next destination, get a good night's sleep to be ready to play on Saturday evening.
Plus, it's not easy to get out of Omaha.
Very, yeah,
Flight
absolutely.
wise,
Yep.
I know the
Some
baseball
of them,
teams had
there's
that,
direct
they've
to
had
about
to,
half.
the baseball teams had to stop games in the seventh inning because the other team had to get on a flight.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Uh, who's been your unsung hero this year?
Gosh. I think it's, and I say this with sincerity, I think it's the players that don't get on the court very much. It's the Abby Milners, the Katie Mazers, the Jaya Johnson, who's redshirting, the Destiny Simpson, who was playing and not playing as much and could play, Morgan Colangelo, I know I'm forgetting, Emma, Ziegler, Audrey Clark, these, and I'm probably forgetting someone. I always say don't say names because then I'm forgetting someone. But my point being is these are the guys that come in every single day and work their tail off, and that's not the person that Tim's asking about, right? And they are doing so much for our team to prep us, working hard, be the emotional leadership a lot of times during the game. And I think sometimes they're the unsung heroes that people don't see. And maybe they're unsung heroes because they really thought they'd be starting and they're not. And that's hard. And they still are great teammates. And, they're the type of kids that if they wanted to sink the ship by complaining in the locker room, they could, but they're not. And so I think, those are the special players.
When you talked about the travel, that just triggered a question for me that I'd love to ask you, because that's been my big proponent on this whole thing. When Gonzaga's name is mentioned, I always think the absolute, like Max says, well, it's just as close to Spokane as it is to New York for us, so we don't really care. But how would you feel about that if Gonzaga was added? And again, it probably wouldn't be that big a deal for Creighton because, like I said, it's you're in the middle. It'd be a bigger deal for the East Coast teams. But if they added, and not even Gonzaga, but other teams, how would you feel about adding more, sports to a school with more sports to the Big East?
Well, I mean, again, we're a basketball centric league. When they make decisions, they're making it for men's
Sure.
basketball. So Gonzaga obviously makes a choice. It makes sense for men's basketball. It doesn't make sense for volleyball. It's not a good ad. They've struggled. It's, they wouldn't increase our league RPI. So selfishly, those are the programs I want to add. The teams that are top 20 programs, top 50 programs, that's going to advance our league RPI. I don't know if I have a strong opinion on adding teams, Tim. I think every time we add teams, we have the worst number right now. 11 is a horrible number. So would I love to get to 10 or 12? Yes. I mean, because then it's an easier, but 11 is the worst number, even worse than 9. 9's a bad number too. So, I don't even spend a lot of time worrying about that stuff because I know they're not making volleyball decisions on that, which I respect. And B, I'm not involved in that. So I'm not spending a lot of energy wishing and hoping. If they were coming to me for advice, then I'd do more research and be able to answer that question better, but they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought 10 was perfect for everything. You know what I mean? It's like a nice round robin, nice number. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes it much easier because we're not even on a round robin anymore. We're one weekend less of a round robin.
Yeah. So real big picture question here, and I don't know quite how to word this, but I know you'll give me an excellent answer, as you always do. But when you were back 5 years, maybe even further than that, maybe 8 years ago, and you're looking beyond in the future, and okay, because you're so process driven, which is really, in my view, why this program's so successful and so consistent. Were you looking at like 8 years down the road? Were you thinking, okay, so that would be now? Were you thinking, man, I'd really love us to be at a consistent level, which, I mean, the consistency is off the charts, right? Or were you maybe like, gee, I'd like to have more success in the postseason? I mean, where were you, knowing you with the process, you just wanted to be consistent, but where were you back then? Were you even, I mean, when you look back now and go, man, look at the consistency we've had, because let's face it, you lose some seniors, you get a couple injuries, and boom, things can go south in a hurry.
I think coaches live in a state of fear at all times. So, I don't think it's at least in my case, it's not as smart as maybe you're making it sound it is. It's trying to find the best athletes. the best kids that are going to advance the program. We do make a difference. I will say this, we'll see kids recruiting and say, we think this kid could win the Big East, but could they get us to a Final Four? And if we don't feel like they could maybe get us to a Final Four, we usually don't offer, because we want to be bigger than just what we're doing in the conference. We want to be contenders on the national stage. So we do think of that in the recruiting process.
So that's probably something you didn't think about 8 years ago, or 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, you figure we started making the tournament consistently in 12, and I think it was 17 or 18 we made the Sweet 16. So yeah, I would say in 2008 we sure weren't making that decision. We were trying to make a decision to win the Valley, and then by 2012-13 we were trying to win the Big East. But yeah, now it's try to win the Big East, and how far can we go? I mean, another thing that I spend a lot of energy on is how do we advance the Big East in volleyball? So
Sure.
Our league right now is having a really good year. Our bottom teams have gotten better. So we are the 6th best league in the country out of 33 leagues. So behind all the P5, we are next up as the best league in the country, which is awesome, because a couple of years ago we were in the 9-10 range. And that's critical to our success. So it's a selfish want for the Big East to be great. We need DePaul to improve. We need Butler, who has a new coach, to improve. Xavier's showing, we're doing what St. John's doing this year is great. So we want to have all of our teams in that 150 plus range. And that's huge for all of us. So that's been a huge thing for us this year.
Well, I know you're too humble to say this, but the fact that Creighton's been so good, I think, has pulled the rest of the teams up. I use the UConn thing in women's basketball. I mean, I think UConn joining the Big East has pulled a lot of teams, including Creighton, up, to a higher level. And I think you did that with your program, and everybody emulating, wanting to be where you are. So another tip of the cap to you. There you go. You can put another plaque on the wall back there.
The Tim Kruger plaque. I'll look for that.
There you go. I might invent that now that you said it. Well, Coach, thanks so much. Have a good trip out to New York.
Well, we appreciate it.
Bring home a couple more wins, and then we close out the home season, and that's always a fun weekend.
Yeah, it goes by really fast. So hopefully we can take care of things this weekend. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Bye-bye.
Well, it was great catching up with Coach Booth, and she said they're going to head out to the New York area, play Seton Hall, and then St. John's. Back-to-back games, and St. John's currently tied with Marquette and Creighton at the top, so it's not going to be an easy road trip. They're going to have to buckle down and win those two to have any kind of chance. She also made a great point in that interview, as you heard. The top 2 seeds get byes in the tournament. So, if they would somehow lose to St. John's and end up 3rd, they'd have to play an extra game.
What's the furthest she's gone? Elite 8 or Sweet 16?
Elite 8.
Elite 8.
Yeah. But similar. She's been to Sweet 16 one other time, I believe. Yeah.
I know they've had a couple of deep runs. I couldn't remember if she had gotten
last
the
year
Elite 8.
They had an injury right when they hit the NCAA tournament, so that was a bit.
God, can you imagine if they made the Final Four and Nebraska did too?
Oof. Yeah, it'd be crazy.
How pumped up everybody would be.
Nebraska's they are rolling right now. While we were doing the post-game show, they were down 2 sets to nothing, and then after we got done, they came back and won all 3
They're
sets.
just kind of constantly rolling. I don't pay much attention. It just every time I look up, they're like number 1 in the country.
Well, they've lost. This is a first year though they've been number 1 for quite a while.
Yeah,
they've been number 1
all the way
from
through.
Start. Wisconsin was 1, and they were 2 the whole season. Then they beat Wisconsin. So, but I mean, I'm sure the Big Ten tournament will be wild because there's so many good volleyball teams in the Big Ten. By the way, so I was going to mention to you, if you haven't seen the post-game show, you can go back on before tomorrow night's game if you want to see what we had to say about the exhibition game, and we broke down some of the players. So go back onto YouTube. If you're on there right now, go back on, and you can see that post-game show. We had a ton of viewers. We want to thank everybody. Again, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. And we had Trey on here and spoke about everything that's going on. Man, Trey looks so good.
He is good. He's a really good player.
He really looks smooth this year and more. and I can say this for Kalk and Baylor as well. They look just more settled, like more. They're so confident. They know everything that Mac wants. You know?
Right.
And I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, I mean, those guys are another year older. I mean, you think about it's. I mean, this is crazy to think about. It's been 2 years technically since, since Trey really kind of came into his own. Towards the end of his freshman year, with some injuries, and he ended up, obviously Ryan Nemhart broke his wrist at St. John's, and Trey ended up kind of taking the ball and, really playing well in Big East tournament and carrying that over and really kind of saved us that very first game against San Diego State in the NCAA tournament, and to see his kind of maturation to now where everybody is kind of consensus, this is one of the best guards in the country, has been pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, they're so. It's just going to be so fun to watch this team, like you said. It's just going to be. I'm just curious to see, like, how raucous the atmosphere is going to be for tomorrow night. All right, let's. Before we bring on Clayton Collier of Channel 6, we want to talk about one of our fantastic sponsors. That's the Infusion Brewing Company, right here in Omaha. 2 great locations, one in Southwest O, and also the original location in Benson. They've got a lot of great beer. We've got the Let It Fly beers lined up here, and of course it's a big feature when you walk into the bar. They've got a great big stack of them as you come in to grab an ice cold Let It Fly. Tons of like seasonal beers. They have so many different variations of the vanilla bean. They've got the Christmas cookie vanilla bean, s'mores, pumpkin. You and I got to Ross. You and I got to sample a few of them last year, which was
they were good.
unique.
I'm not a huge IPA guy, but they were tasty.
So at any rate, check them out. When you come in here to Let It Fly, have a delicious Let It Fly after a Creighton win, and check them out in the 2 great locations in Benson and Southwest Omaha. So joining us now is from WOWT in Omaha, Channel 6, Clayton Collier. Clayton, welcome aboard.
Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, our pleasure.
Cool setup here.
This is pretty
great
nice,
setup.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Sure. Look at that Bluejay Banter thing back here.
Yeah.
So you're fairly new to Omaha, just got here, but you've been covering a lot of Jay stuff. We've crossed paths several times here over the last month.
Yeah.
But just first tell everybody a little bit about where you've been and what you've been doing and where you came from and so forth.
Yeah, so I've been here about 2.5 months now. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I went to Seton Hall. Let's just get that out of the way off the top. So point being is my first college basketball game was a St. John's game at the Garden back in 2001. I grew up on the Big East. I love Big East basketball, so I'm very excited to be back in an environment where I get to talk about it every day. My last job, I was just over in Memphis at the ABC affiliate over there. So I had to follow the Mason Miller, Jonathan Lawson, Brock Weiss beat because I was covering those guys in high school.
Sure.
So now we're seeing them here with the Blue Jays. There was also a Let It Fly in Memphis as well.
That's
so
the original one.
yeah, exactly.
Germantown, I believe, right?
That's correct. Yeah. They all went to Houston High School together out in Germantown, and Mike Miller had his first Let It Fly out there. And so when I came here to Omaha, I was like, Mason's dad, Mike, he has this restaurant, and everybody's like, called Let It Fly. I was like, man, people really do their research around here. They're like, oh no, there's one downtown now too. I was like, really? Wow, that's crazy. So
our big man here on campus here at Let It Fly, Phil, we were looking at potential sites, and one of them is Memphis. So we're like, oh well, that would be awesome. We could go down there, do our show from Let It Fly. That'd be great. So there we go. And it's actually, oddly enough, on my first bracket today, I had Creighton going to Memphis. It just worked out that way. But there you go. So let's start out. You were in New York at Big East Media Days. You probably, obviously being from New York, you know the scenery and the Madison Square Garden and the whole Big East. But what was your impression of the Big East Media Days this year?
Man, it was busy, wasn't it? There were some big crowds there. I don't think I remember the last time or any time that I had been there where I saw that many people there. I couldn't even get through to try to talk to Rick Pitino with the amount of New York reporters there to see him. There's some incredible storylines this year with this conference. I mean, it may not be in terms of numbers like the deepest, just because this is an 11-team conference and other leagues have more teams. But when the reigning national champion comes in your preseason poll as number 3, and with Marquette and Creighton deservingly so with the amount of guys that they're bringing back, I mean, you've got a really special year on your hands in this conference, and not to mention the cool storylines. I mentioned Pitino. You have Ed Cooley, crossing town, going from, or crossing conference, going from Providence down to Georgetown as well. Just there's so many cool stories coming up with this conference this year, and it could very well end up being the most special year that we have seen out of this league since they've reconfigured.
I think so. And there's been some special years already, really. I think I mentioned, I think you and I were talking about it. You had the mob over with Hurley.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the mob over with Ed Cooley. You had the mob over with Pitino. And then you turn around and there's Sean Miller, probably one of the well-known coaches in the country, sitting there all by himself. Like, that's how crazy it was this year. I mean, it was wild.
And but it's always great being at the Garden no matter what.
Yeah.
Last time I was thinking about it, last time I was there for basketball, last time I was actually in the building was for a Billy Joel concert.
He's got the banner hanging up there.
Oh yeah. They're not putting up any Knicks banners there anytime soon. But the last time I was there was when Seton Hall beat Villanova to win the Big East back in March of 2016. And that was before Chris Jenkins hit the shot about a month later after Ryan Arcidiacono flipped that to him and won the national championship. So it's always cool being there, especially how they drop the scoreboard down. It's some really cool scenery. But, I mean, the Big East has it. It's the Mecca, world's most famous arena. They've got it, and they've got it for the foreseeable future there. And it's just an awesome tradition. And we were talking about it the other day. There's a lot of leagues that could try to make it work, but it's just such a perfect situation with the Big East with the amount of teams in proximity, a short train. Creighton doesn't have that benefit, but I remember in their first few years in the conference just being amazed at how many Jays fans showed up at the Garden that week.
Yeah.
God, I remember that first year, very first year we were in the new Big East, and speaking of Seton Hall, Villanova, Seton Hall was the 8 seed and beat Villanova, who's the 1 seed for that very first year, that kind of newly configured league.
I think that was Sterling Gibbs who had the shot. I was there for that
memory.
one.
Yeah, it was like a noon. I think it was the noon game on Thursday. No, you're right. I'm assuming Clayton. Obviously, you are very well versed in the Big East. Being from New York, coming to the Midwest, obviously a little bit of a culture change. What are your initial thoughts on everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's natural for people to say that, but Omaha isn't anything really. I've been here before, so it's not really anything to get used to, because I traveled for student radio in college. So I've been to Omaha 3 times, before I graduated.
Yeah.
My first market was Bismarck, North Dakota. That was a little bit of a culture shock. But there was I believe it was an exhibition game with Hugh Mary, who's from Bismarck, the D2 school that played Tim Miles' Nebraska team. So I'd already been down to Lincoln and seen all the venues and everything, and Devaney and PBA and Memorial and all that. So I was already pretty familiar when I came here, but Old Market's great, a lot of great restaurants that we've been checking out. I haven't had too much time because, I was at Minnesota, at Colorado, Big East Media Day. So looking forward to actually getting to be here for an extended amount of time and see everything. Zoo's great, by the way.
Very good zoo. Very good zoo.
Have to tip my cap.
As advertised. Yeah, you were saying your memory of the Garden. I was talking with Kevin McNamara, former beat writer Providence, and now he's got his own gig at KMAX Sports. And I said, gosh, Kevin, the last time you and I were speaking right here on this floor, it was COVID. They shut down the game.
Yeah.
Ross was doing color commentary for Creighton that day, and it was crazy. So what are you looking at this Jays team? They kick it off tomorrow night. What do you see out of the Jays?
I mean, I'm excited to see what they can do, right? I think there was definitely a roller coaster of an offseason. You lose Ryan Nemhard, Arthur Kaluma. You wonder what's going to happen. Is Ryan Is Kalkbrenner going to come back? Is Trey Alexander going to come back? Like what's going to happen? A lot of flux, as we're used to now with the transfer portal era, with NIL, with everything else. And I think this broke as well as it probably could for the Jays. Obviously, you have Stephen Ashworth coming in, very viable replacement, if you want to call it that, for Ryan Nembhard. What's fantastic is how already this team moved the ball with 3 guys, at least on a given night, with Baylor and Ryan and Trey last year. And, Steven's a guy that fits in perfectly like that. He's just also happens to be one of the best 3-point shooters in the country on top. So, the question becomes what happens, with this 4 position. But if they get consistent production where you have, a terrific viable answer there in Mason Miller coming through, it's not like you're putting in a guy who doesn't have any college experience and you're just hoping for the best. I mean, this is a 4-star, son obviously of Mike Miller, NBA great, Memphis Grizzlies great as well. And
who, by the way, I believe is going to be here tomorrow night.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think I just saw him having dinner, by the way. Oh. But, who's been in your program for 2 years in a system where they are developing talent like crazy here, in Omaha, and now you're going to plug him in. So I think that's going to be an excellent answer. And if you don't, you have another 4-star in Isaac Trout who's there to help out, and Greg McDermott has said great things about Jason Green. You have a lot of options no matter what, but I think Mason Miller is ready to go here. And nonetheless, you have all these veteran guys around. I think they have been given the accurate amount of praise preseason that they deserve, because number 2 in the conference. I mean, you have all of this talent coming back. You have reasonable answers to replace what you lost, if not great answers. I'm excited to see what they can do. And I think this is a team that, can challenge Marquette. Marquette obviously is your clear number 1. When they win the Big East last year, they bring back the Big East Player of the Year, understandable. But the way this team is cooking, I think that, Creighton could easily have, the best season that we've seen in this program's history this year.
Yeah.
So
a lot of players looking forward to that, Marquette.
Clayton, I'm curious, as a Seton Hall grad, what's the pulse around your alma mater in their program right now? There's not a whole lot of buzz right now.
Yeah.
I know Shaheen Holloway's in year 2. It's a little bit of a regime shift, but I would say, of all the teams, you talked about Big East Media Days and how everybody is so excited for the league. It seems like, there's not a whole lot of being written about, not a whole lot of love of Seton Hall, Butler. Kind of seem to be the main 2 that have flown under the radar.
Yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, I think it's a regime change. I think it's trying to build back and everything. In general, it's difficult with, NIL and transfer portal. Seton Hall, those Providence of the world, those are some smaller programs, and it's tougher to get ahead with the way things are right now. And that's not an end all be all answer on things, but
sure.
I remember in Memphis it was the same thing. Penny Hardaway was competing and making the tournament and getting this talent in, but they struggled when it came to NIL, and from there it was a matter of managing what talent you can bring in, as opposed to everybody that he really, that the aura of maybe Penny Hardaway could bring in. And somewhere with, probably that has a little more support, a larger school like Creighton, I would think. I haven't quite dove into the financials yet, but I imagine, that's something that probably they have that maybe, some of the tinier schools like your Seton Halls and your Providences of the world may not in that same way.
Creighton got way out ahead of NIL. They were on it right off the get-go, and you see that around the country. Different schools got way out ahead of it. Then there were schools like, you mentioned Memphis. Villanova was one that didn't get out in front of it. Minnesota did not get out in front of it. And, I think you're going to see it's a big difference if you didn't get out in front of it, because you're not going to get those transfers coming in that maybe you would have, and especially – a coach like, when Jay Wright was there, he wasn't a big fan of the transfer portal either. So now you're like, boy, you're really behind the 8 ball. We're talking with Clayton Collier of Channel 6. By the way, Clayton, a close personal friend of John Fanta, did a lot of radio with John.
There we go. There we
go. Our good friend that joins our show from time to time. He's got to be so big now, Clayton. Maybe he can help us out. He doesn't come on our show nearly as much.
Well, I will tell you, he came into Seton Hall already from high school, already calling he had hundreds of broadcasts already under his book. Like seriously, by the time that he had come to college, so I mean, he was ready from the jump.
He was kind of born to do what he does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way that he talks and everything, like he was the same way, way back when as well. So
Does he still wear that Big East blazer at Big East tournament with all the teams on it?
He didn't have it at media day. Maybe it may have been at the
good at media day though. He was pretty.
He did.
Pretty sharp.
May have been at the cleaners.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes
Well,
sense.
we kind of remember him here because when I first heard of him, I would pop up the feed for the baseball games, and he was doing the baseball game.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this guy? Oh, John Fanta. Okay.
Yeah, I think I remember him. Did he eat a hot dog or something? There was some ballpark food. I remember that did really well when he was out here.
He was the sideline, I think, for the Big East tournament one year.
Yeah.
He did the hot dog thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. Real pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure you're in Omaha, and great to see you covering the Jays as much as you are, and look forward to some really good. The Jays they have a great non-conference schedule this year, but it's not over the top like last year's was. Last year's was just 4 games in a row. They played they played Texas Tech, Arkansas, Arizona, and Texas, all away from home. I mean,
Then Nebraska,
yeah, I mean, I challenge
who finished
anybody to
basically
go through that
500 in the
run.
Big Ten. Yeah.
So, but a great non-conference schedule with Iowa, Oklahoma State, and obviously the big one is Alabama. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, it prepared them well last year.
Yeah, it did. It did. In the long run, it did pay off. Well, thanks, Clayton.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
It's Clayton Collier of Channel 6. Okay, so Ross, we want to take a look at a little thing we call Shoot Your Shot, which is where we make predictions. If you make a easy prediction, it's like a free throw, or excuse me, a layup, second toughest free throw, toughest three-pointer. And I was looking over the chart the other day to see if anybody had. You made one though that's kind of out, that's hanging out there that could give you a check mark as a win at any time, and that is you predicted, and we put this down as a three-pointer because it is kind of a long shot. I'm sorry, actually, we had this as a layup. That must have been Zach that coded that one. You said Big East. Oh, no, Big East. I thought you had Creighton. Big East would be in the top 2 in Ken Palm at some point this year.
I said that was a layup.
Yeah, well, we said that was a layup because we said, well, the Big East is so strong. Odds are if somebody runs one of the top 3, or even Villanova, somebody runs off the table right away like 11, 12, and 0, they're probably going to be in the top 2. So we thought maybe that wasn't as big a stretch as saying a specific team. But you've got another one that the biggest one that this is a three-pointer, that Nova wins the Big East. That was a bold prediction.
It sounds bold now. I'm really curious if they're going to be battling for the title all year, and they may not finish first, and they may have a very successful March. And I'm kind of curious if we look back and we're like, actually, that wasn't that bold, that roster, because I really believe in the roster. I mean, I think, they had a first-year head coach last year in Kyle Neptune. He had dealt with a little bit of some injuries. Things just didn't go as planned. I think early they really kind of hit their stride for a few weeks there late in the season last year.
They were rolling late.
They picked up a couple of huge transfers from the portal to go along with now a healthy Justin Moore. Dixon's back.
Dixon's there for his 8th year.
It does seem like he's been there for a long time, but I just really believe in that roster.
Yeah, well, you got to, if you go off last year, and the momentum they had going into the Big East tournament was tremendous last year. A lot of people were picking to win the tournament. I mean, they were on a roll. So, yeah, I would definitely say that's part of it. I am going to put one out there right now. I am going to say that Creighton will win these first 2 games by an average of 35 points.
So Florida A&M and North Dakota State by an average of 35.
35 points, correct.
It's a lot of points.
So I would post that down as a free throw. It's not a three-pointer, but it's not an easy layup either.
I don't know much about North Dakota State's team post Grant Nelson departure. Obviously, that's a pretty massive person to be leaving.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, about Grant Nelson, I mean, even with him last year, that's a team that really didn't live up to kind of what their past had been last year. They really kind of struggled at times. Really had a very kind of middle of the road, mediocre record. So it'll be interesting to see without him even how they'll fare this year.
Yeah, I wonder the number of North Dakota State fans that come down. Of course, they get football going on, although, gosh, when's the last time they've lost 3 games in a season in football? It's been a long time. But I'm going to actually be on Fargo Radio here later in the week, breaking down the game with the Bison. So it'll be a lot of fun. But I'm going to put that one down. I'll mark it as a free throw. We can have a discussion offline here if you guys feel it's more of a layup, but I don't think so. I think it's not a layup. I mean,
I think we can keep it the way it is. It's all good.
All right.
No discussions offline need to be had.
Yep. All right. So anyway, we want to point out Florida A&M's the opponent tomorrow night. They're 7-22 last year. They're out of the SWAC. Coach McDermott said the other day, he expects maybe some full court pressure out of them. He also expects maybe they might throw a little bit of zone at us to see how we, handle a zone, because everybody goes, oh, they're such great three-point shooters, you can't throw a zone. There are zones you can really mess up a three-point shooting team if they don't handle it well.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, the talent level is going to be a big disparity, and they are generally fairly athletic, so we'll see. I mean, I don't know what kind of things they'll handle. As Josh and I were talking on the last post game, you hope in these games that before Iowa that somehow those flaws are picked out a little bit that Creighton has, to see how they handle it and what they can do to correct it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Last year's first game of the season was actually kind of dicey for about 25, 30 minutes against the St. Thomas team that's proven themselves to be a very formidable team in the Summit League. I mean, I think you talk to a lot of people that are really deep into the hoops world, and there is a pretty general consensus group think that in a few years that league is going to be all St. Thomas. They've got the money, they've got the facilities, they've got talent, they've got the history. Florida A&M traditionally has not been a great program basketball-wise, so I don't necessarily expect the same sort of effort that St. Thomas gave last year, but it'll be interesting. You never know. I mean, we could be surprised, and we'll find out, I guess.
Well, at any rate, tomorrow night, Tuesday, 8:00 tip, and then come down here before the game, have a pregame meal, a few cocktails before the game. You got plenty of time to do that tomorrow night, and then head on over after the game. You can listen to our post-game live right here, live at Let It Fly, and you can also listen to it live on our YouTube channel. I want to thank you for joining us on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button so you can share this with all Jays fans. Well, for Ross Ferrarino, I'm Tim Kruger. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to thank our guest, Coach Booth and Clayton Collier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow night, right after the Jays, 15 minutes after the tip, the final horn of the Jays game, for the Bluejay Banter and Let It Fly post-game show. We'll see you then.